Hey, how's everybody doing today? My name is Corey Moore. Some of you guys know me by Corey Stones. Today is February the 20th. It's about 2:45 p.m. It's a Sunday afternoon. Today's topic of discussion is the psychology of sales. So we're going to talk about the sales process. We're going to identify the key components of the sales process. We're going to talk about human psychology. We'll talk about personality. We'll talk about the sales process in general and understanding the psychological effect that we either have consciously or subconsciously have. It's all a part of the sales process. So the goal here is to identify that process, kind of break some stigmatisms, talk a little bit more about sales as something that's okay and not something that should be shunned upon. In further videos in the future, what I'll do is I'll take some of these topics in more detail and I'll break them down even further. So basically, the primary goal with this video, one of the primary goals, is to normalize the conversation about sales. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people about sales and the demeanor, the facial expression, the body language, everything immediately changes. And they say, I don't like sales. Or I'm so glad that I'm not in a sales position. And so there's this social stigmatism that's related to the sales process that I think is wrong. And I think it needs to be changed. And so the goal here, one of the goals is to discuss that and talk about that as something that's okay. And, everybody has this misconception about a salesperson and probably no direct hit intended, but the car salesman. How many people have you heard tell you the story about the sleazy car salesman? And I think that has been portrayed in media and in social circles and just different things in our lives. So we now associate sales as something that's wrong and something that's not good. And I have a lot of experiences in a lot of different businesses. I'm 39 years old. I started my first business when I was 20. One of the things that was always common, no matter any of the businesses that I was ever involved in, was selling. You're either selling a product or you're selling a service. And without the successful sales of whatever it is that you're selling, the business can't thrive. It can't grow. It can't survive. So breaking the stigmatism of sales and of the sales process, I think, is critical to your psychology, the seller. So if you are ever going to be in a position where you're going to be the seller, and after this conversation, most people will find themselves in that position, it's important to have the confidence. That confidence starts with breaking the stigmatism, understanding that you're not doing anything wrong. You're simply selling a product or a service. Of course, there's right and wrong ways to sell that product and service. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But at the end of the day, you're selling a product and service that the survival of your business and your livelihood is critical upon that component. So recognizing that the sales process is critical and it's okay to sell. And that's so important for confidence and understanding what it is that you're doing. Every single thing can be related to sales. And so this doesn't apply to just someone that's a business owner. This applies to anyone that has a professional job, because you can sell a product and a service like we think about sales, normally, a tangible object, right? Tangible, it's a product you're buying. Intangible, it might be a service. But even further into the intangible side of the sales process is you have your expertise, you have your personality, you have your unique sets of skills, you have your experience. All of this is an intangible asset that you are trying to sell, whether you're trying to acquire a new client, whether you're trying to get hired in the beginning. It's not necessarily sales in the normalcy that we tend to think of it is, but sales can really be applied to almost any profession and anybody that has a job. So that's important as well. Understanding everything can be related to sales, your skills, your personality, your expertise, those tangible items and those intangible items. Again, it's not just for a business owner. it doesn't matter if you own a business or not. Understanding the psychology of sales, understanding the sales process is critical to the success of really anyone that's a professional. So when you're identifying the sales process, it's pretty basic, right? You've got the buyer, you've got the seller, and then in between that, you've got the communication process. The communication process is key. And I can't tell you how much communication is critical in anything that you're doing, whether it's communicating instructions to a team, whether it's applicable in the sales process, whether you're trying to duplicate instructions. Communication is so important. And really, when you get into the communication side of things, that's when you start to understand the psychology of sales and human interaction. First things first, everybody wants to be treated with respect. They want to be treated as if that was the same way they treat themselves, right? So a mutual respect amongst all parties involved in this communication process, aka the sales process. Furthermore, being confident as the seller without displaying arrogance. And that's a really difficult thing to do, because when you get into the seller, right? The seller is the person that's trying to get the buyer to give them money or give them the yes or the thumbs up or okay, we got a deal, whatever that closure is. In traditional sales, you think about it as you're getting payment, right? So as the seller, you have to display that sense of confidence without the arrogance, but you also have to do several other things. You have to ask questions. You need to ask the seller questions about what it is that they're buying and or what it is that they're interested in. Understanding the answers to those questions is how you can calculate your response as a seller. So you've got to listen, you've got to ask questions, you've got to ask the right questions, and then you've got to use the answers to those questions from the buyer and then calculate your response. And furthermore, while you're doing all of that, you have to time manage that process, because the sales process is from A to Z. A is initial introduction, and Z is the closure, the completion of the process. So understanding how to time management that process also goes to the psychology, because you don't want to be rude to the buyer. You don't say, what do you want? Can I help you? Are you going to take out your credit card right now? Can I go ahead and get payment from you? No, nobody's going to be intrigued by that process. So there's a way in which your personality as the seller is displayed genuinely, professionally to the buyer, but without arrogance, so that you can listen to what they say, respond with genuine, honest answers based on the questions that you ask, so you can further that sales funnel down to the completion and the closure. So I've been in positions where I don't want my time wasted. And I'll be real honest with you. Certain clients will just chatty Cathy's. They will not stop talking. So as a professional, you have to control that process. You have to control that conversation. Part of that is with the time management, understanding where is this buyer at right now? Are they just generally inquiring? Are they ready to make a decision today? Are they seeking additional information? Understanding the psychology and understanding the personality of your buyer will also help you. You can get further sharpened, right, with your approach, with how you ask those questions, what questions you ask, and those responses that they give you. Every buyer is going to be different. Every buyer in the process is going to be different. So understanding where they are in the process, understanding what type of buyer that they may be, then you can step back and understand exactly how to approach them in the most efficient way possible. Because I can't tell you how many people I've sent 2 emails, maybe an initial phone call. The next thing you know, the sale's closed. Send them the invoice link. They've paid for it. Done. Ball's in our hand. Closed sale. Now, that can only happen through clear communication, a sense of confidence and a sense of trust, a sense of professionalism that you display as the seller, that only comes with time. But if you can close deals faster, therefore more efficient, that's a great time management tool for you. It allows you to do whatever you want. Spend more time with family, find more deals to close, less effort required to close those deals, and so on and so forth. So the human psychology that goes into why this buyer is seeking a product or a service. Well, sometimes it's emotion. If I'm selling jewelry, which is what I've been selling for 17 years, expensive jewelry, there is an emotional connection to that piece of jewelry. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a lost loved one, there's a lot of different emotions that are tied into that type of purchase. When you're understanding the psychology about this process, the sales process in general, understanding what the key emotion or the key driving factor is related to their need or their desire or their want for this product or service will further help you continue to stay on point and continue to stay on focus with the goal. The goal is to solve their problem by providing them with the solution that solves that problem. For example, if they're seeking an engagement ring, well, the problem, although it's not a problem, the problem is they're newly engaged or they're about to be engaged. So they're here talking about an engagement ring. The engagement ring is the solution to figuring out what it is that this couple wants for their newly engaged relationship. That's just one example. Another example might be safety. Maybe somebody needs to purchase something, insurance, for example. They want to buy health insurance. Whatever the case may be, you have to find what the driving factor is behind the purchase of the product or the service and make sure that your conversation through the sales process sticks to that message, stays on point. And that is the psychological control that you have to have as the seller when communicating to the buyer so that you don't deviate from that topic of discussion. Hey, Fred, how's the weather? Hey, John, did you see such and such game last night? That's small talk, and sometimes that can be necessary to break the ice or to make someone feel more comfortable. But at the end of the day, that's all nonsense. That's filler conversations that really, if you can learn to remove, will make the sales process from A to Z a lot more efficient. So staying on message and keywords and trigger words. I've been in certain circumstances where I've said the wrong thing and I've killed the deal. And if you sell long enough, you'll be in positions where that may happen to you, and almost guaranteed it's going to happen to you, because the more you sell, the more deals you lose, because you have mathematical probability. So the more deals you lose, the more you're like, hey, I don't like the way that makes me feel. So you analyze how you lost that deal to improve on future deals in the future. And the psychology, each personality that comes into play, there's so many moving dynamics and moving parts with it. It's really an interesting thing once you dissect it and dive deep into the sales process. And I enjoy sales. As a business owner, I've learned to enjoy it because it is, like I said in the beginning, such a critical part to the success of your business. And the more that you can have fun with it and enjoy it, the better you are. And that's going to lead me into some of the other topics that we'll talk about next. But making sure I highlight, making sure you say the right things and don't say the wrong things is so critical to the success of your sale. A lot of times clients will ask me, what do I think? And my response is always, well, listen, I'm not you. I can tell you my opinion. I can tell you my perspective, but this decision that you're making needs to be your opinion, your decision, and your perspective. So not crossing boundaries and making sure that you're not persuading a client to make a decision that's your decision. You give them the information and you let them make the decision that's best for you. And if you're a successful, good salesperson, then you can persuade them into making the decision that you want, which is ultimately closing the deal, because you're communicating with them. If they didn't want the product or the service, they wouldn't even be talking to you. They wouldn't have even approached you, or they wouldn't even have been giving you this time of the conversation. They'd have walked away or hung up the phone or whatever. So if you've got somebody engaged with you at this capacity, the likelihood that they are interested in your product or service is very high. So don't say the wrong things. Make sure you say the right things. On point with your keywords. Stay away from your trigger words. You know, one of the things that I always laugh about is know when to shut your mouth. I have had so many people who I've seen got the sale in the bag and they don't stop talking. They do not allow the client to end the sales process by completing the sale, giving form of payment, or saying, thank you very much, I have the information that I need. They don't stop talking, the seller. The buyer had already decided to buy, but because this individual continues to speak, they don't know when to stop talking. They kill the deal. That's important because that time period to stop talking is different in every process. Normally you can feel it. As a salesperson, you can feel the emotion in the air. At least for me, I can. So I know when to back off and when I'm supposed to stop talking. I've done the process so much that usually I'll go through kind of the critical parts of whatever it is, the product or service that I'm selling, and then I'll stop and let them make the decision. And that goes to, probably one of the most important parts of it is asking for the sale. The two most common things are people don't know when to stop talking. And the other most common thing is most people that don't close any sales are not asking for the sale. You have to understand there is a process of sales completion. Usually that is someone signing the dotted line. That is someone giving you a deposit. That is someone taking out money and physically transacting with you for the good or service that you have provided to them. That is the completion of the sale. That is the closing process. Without that, you have nothing. And so many people that I talk to, it bothers me to death. They say, well, they're going to be a client. They're going to be a client. They're going to come. Billy and Joe and Sally, they're going to come back. You never hear from them again. You never hear from them again. That doesn't mean that I'm discrediting the customer acquisition process or the process of acquiring a new client and the time period that takes, because that does take time in certain scenarios. You have to foster that relationship. You have to, those people have to trust you, especially if you're selling expensive items like diamonds and jewelry. So understanding that is so important. Unless you have asked for the sale, then you have never gotten to the completion of the closing process. Doesn't mean you're going to get them to say yes for every sale, but you've got to ask for the sale. If you don't ask for the sale, you're never going to make the sale. Sometimes that asking of the sale is, Mr., ma'am, if you're ready to go ahead and make that purchase today, we can go ahead and take care of that with a Visa or MasterCard, wire transfer. If you'd like to sign this purchase order or this invoice, we'll go ahead and send you the payment link. You can process the order directly. However your sales process functions, that is the completion of the closing process. Without it, you have nothing. Understanding that is key. At the end of the day, if you've got a good product or a good service, it makes the sales process that much easier. So, of course, you've heard the funny stories where, that person's such a great salesperson. They could sell a ketchup popsicle to a person in a white suit or whatever these silly little old sayings are. That means they've got a bad product, but they can still sell. I've seen people like that. And when you understand the psychology and when you've sharpened your pitch really, really well, there's a lot of salespeople that can sell stuff that's garbage or that you don't really need. It's like nonsense, right? What the heck am I buying here? This person just sold me. right? Kudos to them. They're a great salesperson. But when you have a good product or a good service, the selling process becomes that much easier. It becomes that much easier to be confident. It becomes that much easier to stand behind what it is that you're selling. So when you're getting involved in a product or a service, or you're going to get a new job, or you're starting a new business, understanding what it is that you're selling is the best, most important thing. Because if you're selling crap, then you're going to have a hard time selling crap, even if you're a good salesperson. You need to understand that selling a good product and service directly affects your ability to sell it. I don't care how good of a salesperson you are. So, with that being said, that's my overview and my general breakdown of sales as a psychology. So what I'm going to do in future videos is I'm going to take some of these other topics that are really subjects in themselves, and we'll break them down even further. Again, thanks for joining, guys. Anything you're selling, products or services, good luck. Again, I'm Corey Moore, aka Corey Stones. Peace.